A sharp voice cracked through the marble hall. "Sir, please leave immediately. This club is for members only." The security guard's hand brushed the radio at his belt. Above them, the crystal chandeliers of the Sterling Club in Chicago shattered light into cold fragments like 1,000 watchful eyes. It was 2:47 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. The air smelled of polished oak and that expensive silence money could buy. Marcus Reed stopped. He straightened the lapel of his navy suit, the hem of his trousers, whispering over the Carrara stone floor. His heartbeat stayed even. His dark eyes held no anger, no fear, only calm. He walked to the mahogany reception desk, where Sarah Clark looked up with a smile she had practiced for 8 years, soft at the lips, hard beneath the eyes. "Are you lost, sir? The service entrance is in the back." Her voice was a velvet blade. Her shoulders rose slightly, a reflex carved deep into habit. This man didn't belong here. "I have a reservation," Marcus said. The antique clock beside them groaned 3 times. Sarah tilted her head slightly, her fingers tapping on the desk, quick, even impatient. The monitor flickered. P7 3 o'clock, M. "Reed party of 2, she frowned. That initial was irritating. M could be anyone. It says M or Reed. Must be a mistake. Our members reserve weeks in advance. We don't take walk-ins." Marcus's tone didn't change. "Private room 7 under Reed. I booked it yesterday." A short laugh escaped Sarah's throat, sharp as crystal-striking wood. From the waiting area, a woman wearing a pearl necklace, Amanda Hutchins, lifted her phone, the red light of a live stream blinking on. Her camera swept across the grand hall and stopped on the man standing tall before the counter like a monument. "Do you see this Sterling Club? This man insists he has a private room." The comments poured in like water breaking a dam. "Call the cops, he's too calm. Obvious discrimination." Sarah leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Are you a member, sir? Where's your card?" Marcus reached for his wallet, slowly, deliberately. The steel glint of his Patek watch caught the light casting a thin silver streak across the ceiling. Inside the wallet, the edge of a first-class ticket peeked out from JFK to O'Hare, seat 1A. A black Centurion card lay silent like a polished stone. "I didn't bring my membership card. The reservation should be enough. You can call upstairs to confirm." Beneath the counter, Sarah's hand slid toward the alarm button. The press was soft, almost like a sigh. Down the hall, security guard Tom Rogers noticed the signal light without changing expression. 23 years in the job had taught him to classify people in 3 seconds, troublemaker beggar threat. The man in front of him fit none of those. Too calm, too composed, suspicious only in that nothing about him was suspicious. "What's the issue, Sarah?" Tom asked. "This man claims to have a reservation, refuses to leave." Sarah was still smiling, but her throat had tightened. She hated the overly confident ones. She knew their type, the ones who tried to slip into places not meant for them, a flaw in her perfect system. Marcus glanced at his watch. "My guest will arrive in 16 minutes. Your guest, Sarah, stressed the word. Who would that be? Kevin Armstrong. Flew in from New York." Amanda brought her phone closer. Views spiked instantly. A comment flashed Armstrong, as in the hotel chain. Suddenly the audience grew. People at the bar turned their stools. The chef peeked through the kitchen door. The air shifted, now smelling not of oak, but of overheated phones. The elevator dinged. Jennifer Brooks appeared like a perfectly timed piano note, cream blazer, confident heels clicking in rhythm. Her eyes scanned the lobby, assessing, classifying, deciding. The man didn't shout, didn't glare, didn't search for allies. He stood as if waiting for a cab, not surrounded by layers of protocol. "Can I help you?" Jennifer asked. Marcus inclined his head politely. "I reserved P7 at 3 in the afternoon for 2, but it seems the system has a glitch." Jennifer looked at the screen. The line was there, cold and indifferent. M or Reed? She looked up with a thin smile. "The reservation is confirmed, but we do require membership verification." Sarah didn't wait. She pressed the alarm harder, as if pressure could force the world to match her version of order. Mike Patterson, broad shoulders, stiff collar, moved toward the entrance, blocking the exit in perfect formation. Conversations broke off mid-sentence. No one liked breathing in air that smelled like confrontation. "Please stop counting down," Jennifer said when she saw Marcus glance at his watch again. "You're making everyone nervous." "I'm making them nervous." Marcus tilted his head, faint amusement in his eyes. 3 guards for a reservation dispute. The words fell neatly. In the kitchen, knives stopped tapping the cutting board. At the bar, the gin and tonic went still. Amanda whispered into her live stream. "He hasn't raised his voice once." A viewer typed, "That's discrimination." Another replied, "It's just protocol." Views passed 400, climbing like mercury in a summer thermometer. "You're not allowed to make calls." Tom cut in when Marcus took out his phone. "Resolve this first. Resolve what exactly Marcus asked. I'm standing where I paid to be." "What's the charge?" Sarah felt heat crawl up her neck. She had seen this before. One slip and order would collapse. Rules were the rope she clung to, not out of faith, but fear of what would happen if she let go. The elevator chimed again. A silver-haired man with a classic cut suit stepped out. "Harold Whitman member," someone whispered. Harold's eyes swept the room, landing on Marcus, then the 3 security guards. "What's going on here?" "This man claims to have a reservation," Sarah said quickly. "But he can't produce a membership card." "Have you checked his ID?" Harold asked, emphasizing each word, as if teaching children to read. Membership cards and identification are not the same. For a moment, reality straightened itself. Marcus handed over his driver's license. Harold looked. "Address Central Park West." He nodded, returning it, cautious, polite, precise, the old virtues luxury hotels often forgot. 10 minutes left, Marcus murmured. "Before my guest arrives and finds his business partner being detained in the lobby of his own club." A wave of whispers spread. Amanda leaned into her phone. Did he just say, "his own club"? Comments exploded. Plot twist. Who is he? Jennifer inhaled deeply, trying to steer the situation back to neutral. She knew the weight of the words, public relations crisis. She also knew the enemy of management wasn't chaos. It was pride, disguised as procedure. "Mr. Reed," she said in a gentler tone, "please step into the office so we can handle this privately." "No," Marcus replied politely. "My guest will meet me here in the lobby. I told him so." Sarah heard her own voice from somewhere far away. "If you don't leave, you could be charged with trespassing." The word hit the marble floor and shattered into 1,000 sharp pieces. The lobby held its breath. Mike's hands tightened slightly. Tom tilted his head, waiting for the radio signal that didn't come. Harold's eyebrows rose, his gaze cutting toward Jennifer. On what grounds? Marcus reached into his inner pocket. 3 security bodies tensed at once. Amanda raised her phone higher, her hand trembling. Marcus pulled out a white business card, placing it on the counter, like the final move in a game. Sarah leaned in. Simple text, no ornament, on thick ivory paper. Marcus Reed, Chief Executive Officer, Sterling Hospitality Group. The only sound left was the grandfather clock swallowing a gulp of air. Several breaths were forgotten midway. Jennifer blinked her wrist, freezing mid-motion, the instinctive stillness of someone watching the axis of a building shift. Tom's hand dropped from the radio. Mike stepped half a pace back, the reflex of a man who had once stood before true authority, quiet, unboastful, needing no validation. Just one card. Sarah gripped the edge of the desk. Cold like metal in winter. In an instant, 8 years behind that counter, flashed through her mind all the correct procedures, the measuring looks the moments she closed a door in someone's face because they simply didn't fit. She suddenly felt herself standing on thin, ice-black water beneath. Marcus didn't raise his voice. 8 minutes left. His tone was a thread pulling everything back to its center. Amanda whispered shakily into the live stream, "Oh my God, CEO. The company that owns this building." The viewer count spiked madly. One comment read, "Silence is power." Another, "This is history turning." Jennifer swallowed hard, regaining her rhythm. "Mr. Reed, aye." The path ahead glowed like a neon sign. "Apologize, confirm, de-escalate." But something sharper cut through responsibility, not for saving face, but for fixing the system. She realized late, but not too late, that the problem wasn't a man without a card. The problem was a habit, a structure. Marcus looked around not to savor their shock, but to measure the exhaustion in the eyes of people trained to follow outdated scripts. He knew every brick of this empire, every programmed smile, every sorry its policy ost as a shield. That was why he was here. The elevator chimed again. No one breathed. But it was only a waiter pushing a silver cart hurrying down the hall. The minute hand ticked forward once more. 7 minutes, Marcus said, not as a warning, but as an invitation. Fix this, or let it become its own story. In the kitchen, knives resumed their rhythm. At the bar, the gin tonic began to melt again. In the lobby, a new silence settled heavy with truth, no longer the silence of luxury. Harold smiled faintly, the knowing smile of an old man who'd seen it all. Then let's do what we should have done from the start. Sarah opened her mouth. The word caught. She turned to Jennifer, seeking a lifeline. But Jennifer was no longer the same anchor. She stood a fraction taller, eyes clearer, voice calm but firm. "Mr. Reed, we confirm the reservation for P7. I apologize for what happened." Marcus nodded slightly. Not in triumph, but in acknowledgement. The story didn't end with an apology. It had just begun. Somewhere above, an elevator door closed. In 654 minutes, a man carrying a $340 million deal would step into this lobby. What would he see? A wall of resistance, or people who learn to open a path? Marcus stepped back half a pace, resting his hand on the counter, cool, smooth, solid as resolve. His gaze swept over every face, guards, receptionist, manager, member, live streamer. "We'll talk upstairs," he said, his voice low and steady. "But before that, I think you should see something else." He reached into his jacket once more. No one blinked. No one breathed. The final seconds before revelation stretched taut as a string. The afternoon's rhythm had changed from a waltz to a drumbeat, tight, fast, sharp. And when his fingertips touched the edge of that slim leather folder in his pocket, everyone in the lobby felt it. This was no longer a small dispute. This was the moment an entire system was forced to look at its own reflection. A soft chime sounded from the corner of the front desk. Sarah's computer screen flickered. A new email appeared with a subject line that held a single word: urgent. The sender was Sterling Hospitality Headquarters. Sarah glanced at it, her heart hammering, but her trembling fingers didn't dare click open. "Mr. Reed," Jennifer said, voice unsteady, but trying to hold rhythm if you prefer. "I can invite you to the management office while we wait for your guest." Marcus looked at her, his gaze not cold, only so calm it made others feel unsafe. "I already said this. I scheduled the meeting in the lobby. If Mr. Armstrong arrives and does not see me, this meeting will be cancelled." Tom Rogers, the long-time security guard, stepped forward half a pace. "Sir, we only need to verify." "You want to verify?" Marcus cut in, his voice never raised each word, dropping like a pebble on still water. "Call the head office. Ask who owns the Sterling Club." The air thickened. Sarah swallowed. She looked at Jennifer, then at the screen in front of her, where the Sterling Hospitality Group logo glowed in the top right corner. She knew one keystroke would confirm what he said, but something primal held her hand back. If he was telling the truth, nothing that had just happened could be undone. The crystal lights overhead trembled. Someone opened the great doors at the back. A cold draft swept in, carrying the sound of traffic on Michigan Avenue. And just then, Jennifer's desk phone rang. She picked up. "Sterling Club, this is Jennifer Brooks." A deep, decisive male voice cut through. "This is Alan Foster, Regional Executive Director of Sterling Hospitality." "What exactly is happening in your lobby?" Cold sweat slid down Jennifer's neck. "Yes, Mr. Foster. It is only a small misunderstanding. There is a guest named Marcus Reed." The other end fell silent for a few seconds. When the voice returned, it had the chill of tempered steel. "Mr. Reed is my direct superior." The words hit like a hammer. Sarah went numb. Tom Rogers clenched his radio, and Jennifer felt her knees want to give. "He is the CEO," she whispered, as if hoping there was some other interpretation. "The CEO of the entire group," Alan said. "And you have just turned his confidential audit into a public relations nightmare. I am on my way. Do not do anything else." Jennifer set the receiver down. For a moment, she heard nothing. No breath, no ticking clock. Only the hard white light pouring from the ceiling, exposing every expression as it cracked. Sarah suddenly burst out, her voice hoarse. "I did not know. I swear I did not know who he was." Marcus looked at her, his eyes free of accusation. "That is exactly the problem, Sarah. You did not know, but you believed you knew everything." Amanda Hutchins, still streaming live, fell silent. She aimed her phone at Marcus, zooming in on his face, steady, quiet, unforced. There was a kind of power there that did not come from a title, but from absolute control over himself and the situation. Jennifer stepped forward, trying to keep her shoulders square. "Mr. Reed, I sincerely apologize. We did not realize," Marcus interrupted, still composed. "It is not that you did not recognize me. It is that you did not recognize the real problem in this place." He set a slim leather folio on the counter. A soft click as the clasp opened. Inside lay internal complaint files, neatly arranged, the number in red at the corner, glaring back 23 complaints, 18 months customer discrimination. Sarah stepped back, her lips parting soundlessly. "That is the list of times you refused service because you judged someone as not up to standard," Marcus said, closing the file lightly. "I have been monitoring for a long time. Today I wanted to see with my own eyes how you look at a person when you assume he is nobody." Jennifer felt her heart contract. She had prided herself on protecting brand image. Now she understood that true brand begins with how a person is treated when no one knows who they are. Tom Rogers, who had stood motionless like a statue, stepped forward half a pace. "Mr. Reed, I was only following procedure." Marcus looked at him slowly. Procedure is never an excuse to forget how to treat people as human beings. In the kitchen, Executive Chef Roberto, who had been peeking through the door from the start, shook his head gently. He murmured, "I knew it. This man did not look like a troublemaker." A young employee beside him whispered, "What will they do to Ms. Sarah now?" Roberto answered in a low voice, "Someone will certainly lose a job. But perhaps what most needs to be lost is not written in a contract." Jennifer swallowed her voice, trembling. "Mr. Reed, may I ask what was your purpose in coming here?" Marcus looked straight at her. "To see whether the people I trust still remember which industry they work in." A heavy silence followed. The elevator doors opened. A new current of air flowed in, carrying a light cologne and the sound of firm footsteps. An Asian man in a grey suit stepped out with 2 aides. His face carried the assurance of someone long accustomed to the head of the table, Kevin Armstrong, CEO of Armstrong International, the man Marcus was about to negotiate a deal worth $340 million with. Marcus turned and offered a small, genuine smile. "Kevin, good to see you again." Kevin frowned slightly. "Marcus, I just got a message." "What happened?" I heard raised voices as I came in. Marcus answered, calm and low. "A minor hiccup in reception." Kevin's eyes swept over Sarah, over Jennifer, over the line of guards still standing. "I am guessing not so minor." He glanced at the camera still rolling. Amanda instantly lowered her phone, heart pounding. She knew she had captured what the press would call a historic scene. Marcus tilted his head, speaking just loud enough for Kevin. "Would you like to see a real lesson in systemic bias?" Kevin gave a small smile, the smile of someone who had caught the scent of an expensive lesson. "I suppose I cannot refuse." Marcus turned to Jennifer. "Private meeting room. 7, is it ready?" Jennifer almost lost her breath. "Yes, sir." Everyone in the lobby watched as the 2 men walked toward the elevators. Each of Marcus's steps landed firm, and even like a metronome for a new manifesto. As the door slid shut, Sarah felt something inside her collapse with that sound. On the way up, Kevin turned to his friend. "You are remarkably calm, Marcus. Most people would have torn this place apart." Marcus smiled faintly. Anger only helps them reinforce their bias. "I need change, not victory in an argument." Kevin considered. "You are playing a very large game." "No, Kevin," Marcus said. "I am rewriting the rules." The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto private room 7, reserved for the most important meetings. The room glowed with soft gold, a walnut conference table, glass walls overlooking Chicago washed in evening light. On the table, silver tea service, white porcelain cups, a minimalist, meticulous style. Marcus seated Kevin, then slowly opened his laptop. The screen displayed 2 parallel windows, the lobby security feed, and Amanda's live stream. There he was standing between 3 guards broadcast live to thousands. Kevin exhaled and shook his head. "You know this is going viral." "I know." "What do you intend to do?" Marcus looked up, his gaze resolute. "Fix it. At the systemic level." He clicked to an internal report. Numbers rose like evidence. 12% of members lost over 18 months. $2.3 million in revenue gone, 23 complaints all tied to reception conduct. Kevin frowned. "This is the cost of prejudice." "No," Marcus said. "This is the cost of complacency." In that moment, a soft chime sounded. A text lit Marcus's phone. "Alan Foster." I have arrived in the lobby managing media. The club is trending on Twitter. Marcus did not look at the phone again. He looked out through the wall of glass, the city glowing like a honeycomb of light. The world does not change because of slogans, Kevin. It changes because people dare to stand still when they are dismissed and still keep their dignity. Kevin nodded slowly. You know, Marcus, in the first seconds I saw you surrounded, I almost stepped in. Then I realized this might be a test you set for your own organization. And they failed, Marcus said. I am not angry. I am disappointed. But disappointment is the beginning of reform. Downstairs, the lobby thinned out. Sarah sat frozen hands, clenched, every excuse stuck in her throat. Jennifer signaled for Amanda to end the live stream, but it was too late. The clip had surpassed 1,200 live viewers and was spreading across platforms. A headline appeared online, Black CEO refused service at a club he owns. Jennifer knew the media wave had begun, and she, once proud to be the face of the Sterling Club, was now the face the country was talking about. Upstairs, Marcus poured tea, each motion slow and precise. You know, Kevin, the day I acquired the Sterling Club, I believed beautiful design and flawless service were enough to preserve class. I was wrong. Class does not come from architecture. It comes from awareness. Kevin looked at his friend and smiled slightly. And today you taught that lesson to the whole industry. The door opened. Jennifer stepped in, face pale. Mr. Reed, there is something you should know. Head office just received hundreds of calls. The press is waiting for an official statement. Marcus set down his cup, his voice low like a cello. Then let them wait. First, I need to finish this meeting. He turned to Kevin. Do you still want to discuss the deal? Kevin answered without hesitation. More than ever. The two men shook hands, a handshake between two tiers of power, one for vision, one for trust. And below, the entire system began to shift without yet knowing what was coming. As the elevator doors closed again, Jennifer stood alone in the lobby. Beside her, Sarah sobbed softly. Amanda looked at them over a camera now dark, but in her chest still echoed Marcus's final words. Procedure cannot replace the human heart. The air lay still like ash, but ash sometimes is the soil where the next fire takes root. The door to the private meeting room closed behind them, sealing off the noise below. Up here there were no whispers, no phone lenses, only a soft wash of golden light falling across the polished walnut table, and the shadow of two men cast on the glass that looked out over Chicago, drenched in late afternoon sun. Marcus Reed set his phone face down on the table. The screen kept blinking with messages from the communications unit, but he did not open them. There was no rush. Everything had an order of priority, and his priority now was the future of an entire system. Kevin Armstrong settled back in his chair, eyes following the steaming silver tea. Marcus, he said slowly, I have witnessed many crises in this industry, but I have never seen anyone face one as calmly as you just did. You know, down there, everything nearly exploded. Marcus nodded lightly. I know. And it needed to explode. Kevin frowned. What do you mean? Sometimes, Marcus said, eyes on the window. If you want to rebuild a rotten house, you have to let it collapse first. The Sterling Club has rotted from within, Kevin. Not because of the building, but because the people inside it forgot why they serve. A strong wind off the Chicago River stirred the curtains. In the dimmed light, his voice sounded like a whispered order. I built this group from an initial $2 million. Now it is worth nearly $800 million. But today those figures mean nothing if I allow those people to make us lose our soul." Kevin went quiet for a moment. He thought of Marcus in the lobby, a calm man in a crowd on the verge of panic. No rage, no bluster, only a silence that made everyone else lower their eyes. "Do you know, Kevin said it was that composure that made me agree to this deal. I have turned down 3 other groups. With you, I see what this industry lacks: human dignity." Marcus smiled faintly. "Dignity is the most expensive asset in hospitality. Lose it and everything else is performance." A soft knock sounded. Jennifer Brooks appeared with a thick folder, her face still pale. "Mr. Reed," she said, small but steady, "Mr. Foster has arrived. He is handling the press downstairs, but he wants to report to you directly." "Have him wait 10 minutes, Marcus replied. "I need to finish with Mr. Armstrong first." Jennifer nodded and eased the door shut. Her footsteps receded like a muted apology, hidden in thick carpet. Marcus opened his laptop and brought up the detailed report. Charts and red trend lines stretched like open wounds. "This is what I intend to change," he said, voice low but firm. Kevin leaned in. Beneath the heading was a long list: bias awareness, training for all staff, an artificial intelligence system to monitor customer feedback, an anonymous reporting channel direct to the office of the chief executive, a full reassessment of recruiting to ensure diversity. He paused, looking at Kevin, and finally, a zero-tolerance policy. Any act of discrimination, however small, will result in immediate termination. Kevin let out a quiet whistle, impressed. "You are not just putting out a fire, you are redesigning the gas lines." Marcus smiled again. "I do not believe in patching. I believe in restructuring." Outside, the sun tilted toward the west. The shadows of the 2 men lengthened across the glass wall, one dark, one bright, crossing right at the center of the table. Marcus, Kevin said after a beat, "You know this will not stop at internal reforms. The press will dig, social media will blow up, and the board will have to step forward." "I know," Marcus answered. "Sometimes losing reputation for a day is the only way to regain trust for 10 years. A wry smile touched his lips. "And to be honest, I would rather be criticized for acting than praised for staying silent." Kevin folded his arms. "So what is next?" Marcus glanced at his watch, the hands pointing to 4 o'clock, a silver stroke flashing at his wrist like the shine of a decision. "In 3 hours, the board will land from New York. I will convene them tonight. But before that, I need to see Sarah." Kevin nodded. "I assume she is about to lose her job." Marcus shook his head slightly. "Perhaps, but I want to hear her first." 10 minutes later, the door opened. Sarah Clark walked in. She was no longer the sharp receptionist from an hour earlier. Her blazer was creased, her eyes reddened, and her hands were crushing a blank sheet into wrinkles. She stopped at the table and bowed low. "Mr. Reed, I do not know where to begin." She trembled. "I was wrong. Very wrong. I only did what I was taught, followed procedure, did what those before me did." Marcus stayed silent. He let her speak. "I believed," Sarah continued, "that my job was to protect the club's class. I did not think I was insulting anyone. I was just afraid of losing my job, afraid of being reprimanded if I let someone not up to standard in." She lifted her face, her voice catching. "But today, when I learned you own this place, I realized I had not only humiliated a guest, I had humiliated my profession." A long silence followed. Kevin watched Marcus, closely wanting to see how he would proceed. Marcus stood, circled the table, and stopped beside her. "How long have you worked here?" 8 years, sir. 8 years, he repeated, his voice dropping. 8 years in service and never learned to see people as people. Zara bowed lower. A tear splashed onto the blank paper, the resignation letter she had prepared. Marcus noticed it, but didn't touch it. Do you know, he said, it is not only me watching you today. There are thousands of people out there replaying that video. You are the face of discrimination. But you can also be the face of change if you wish. Sarah looked up, startled. You are not firing me, Marcus met her eyes. I cannot pardon the behavior, but I can offer a chance. You will leave your current post. For the next 6 months, you will enroll in a program of cultural diversity and advanced guest care. If you pass, you will return in a different role. Not as a gatekeeper, but as a greeter. Sarah broke into tears. Thank you, sir. I will not let you down. Marcus nodded without another word. When she left, Kevin exhaled. You are unusual, Marcus. Others would close the matter with a dismissal. You choose to teach people how to be better. Marcus answered as softly as a breath. If we want to change the system, we must begin with those who were wrong, because only they know what must never be repeated. Outside, Chicago had changed color. The sunset cast gold across the river. The city began to light up each window. A watching eye turned toward the story that had unfolded on the 14th floor. Kevin rose. I think you are not just running a company. You are leading a small revolution. Marcus kept his gaze on the far horizon. Not a revolution, Kevin. A reminder that respect never goes out of style. They fell quiet. Only the wall clock marked 5 chimes, drawing the last daylight down onto the table. Downstairs, the press began to gather. The name Sterling Club was everywhere on television. A banner lit up on Marcus's phone, a special evening bulletin, Black Chief Executive discriminated against at the very club he owns. He nodded once. Good, he said under his breath as if to himself. It is time people heard the truth. Kevin placed a hand on his shoulder. Are you ready to face this storm? Marcus turned back, his eyes steady as steel. I am not only ready, Kevin. I am the one who made it. A thin flash lit the sky, signaling the night rain to come. But in that sealed room on the 14th floor between 2 men, a decision had been made. A decision that would not only save the reputation of the Sterling Club, but would reshape the way the world thinks about respect. The Chicago night sky settled like a black velvet curtain dusted with silver. The rain had not fallen yet, but the damp had already crept into the air. In the Sterling Tower, the lower floors still glowed. Reporters crowded the main entrance lenses, panning without pause. Marcus Reed's name rolled across every news channel and every social feed. High above the main boardroom of Sterling Hospitality blazed with light. 6 black leather chairs ringed an oval walnut table. The wall clock read 7 o'clock in the evening. Everyone had arrived except one. The door opened. Marcus Reed stepped in. His suit was still immaculate, but his eyes had changed no longer, the icy stillness of stone, but a calm tempered with resolve. Everyone stood. The chair of the board, Victoria Sterling, an elegant silver-haired woman, fixed him with a steady stare. Marcus, she said slowly, we need to hear everything before the press burns this brand down. Marcus gave a slight nod. I understand. He moved to the table and opened his laptop. The projection froze on a single frame. Sarah's face bowed at the front desk, 3 guards behind her, crystal light catching his face as he set down the business card. The room fell silent. Victoria folded her arms, eyes never leaving the screen. You let this happen on purpose. Marcus answered, low but crisp. I did not set out to be insulted. I did set out to know the truth. A man's voice cut in. David Chen, Chief Financial Officer. You realize you dropped the stock by 3% in 4 hours, I do, Marcus said without flinching. But if we do nothing, we will lose 30% in 3 years. Every gaze swung back to him. He took a step forward and set his hand on the table. Sterling is not only 5-star hotels and elite clubs. People choose us because they believe we are different. In reality, inside, we have become the worst version of what we once stood against. He tapped a key. The slide changed to a grid of numbers. Over the past 18 months, member attrition rose 12%. Revenue fell by $2.3 million. All of it tied to complaints about attitude bias and disrespect. A sigh slipped from the far end of the table. James Morrison, head of communications, pressed a hand to his brow. Are you saying our entire workforce is the problem? Marcus shook his head. No. A few people are the problem, and the system enabled them. Victoria studied him, her gaze softening a fraction. And what will you do, Marcus? He clicked again. A detailed plan filled the wall. Comprehensive overhaul, mandatory training, an artificial intelligence feedback system, monthly cultural diversity audits, and a scholarship fund for hospitality students from underserved communities. David Chen frowned. Expensive. $500,000 a year for that program. Who pays, I do, Marcus said without hesitation. The room froze. Victoria tilted her head, her voice dropping. You intend to use personal funds? Yes, because failure starts with leadership. If I do not set the example, who will? A heavy quiet settled. Only the slow tick of the clock moved across the wall. Outside, wind began to drum against the glass. Then another voice rose, gentle yet firm. I support this. All eyes turned. It was Sarah Kim, the Human Resources Director. I watched that video 3 times. Each time I saw a painful truth. We did not just hire the wrong people we trained, the wrong mindset. If we do not change now, Sterling will die, not from lack of guests, but from a loss of trust. Victoria nodded. I agree. David Chen sat in silence for a few beats, then exhaled. If the chair says so, I am on board. But Marcus, tell me, what will you do with Sarah Clark? Marcus looked straight at the screen, Sarah's face frozen in the frame. She submitted a resignation. I accepted it. But I will not fire her. James lifted a brow. You are keeping her. Not keeping, Marcus said, giving her a path to atone. 6 months of study and training. If she changes, she returns not as a receptionist, but as a supervisor for the new cultural training program. The boardroom held its breath. At last, Victoria smiled. You are the Marcus Reed I appointed, a mind like steel and a heart still present. Marcus bowed his head slightly. Thank you. At that moment, the door opened. Alan Foster came in, raincoat still wet voice, rough from the cold. Media is exploding. They want an official statement tonight. Victoria motioned to a chair. Sit, Alan. We are almost done. Marcus turned to him. I have prepared a statement. No blame shifting, no evasions. I will take responsibility and publicly announce the full reform plan. I will go on live television tomorrow morning. Alan's eyes widened. Tomorrow morning. You want to face the press head-on within 12 hours, Marcus nodded. I will not hide. When the storm comes, leadership must be the marker post. Victoria inclined her head. I want to hear that statement verbatim. Marcus opened a folder, his voice steady and resonant. We Sterling Hospitality accept full responsibility for the incident at the Sterling Club. We apologize not only to our guests, but to everyone who has placed their trust in us. This incident does not reflect the core values of our brand, but it does reflect a painful truth. We have allowed bias to seep into our service culture. We will not excuse. We will act. Beginning tomorrow, all staff will enter a new awareness program overseen independently. A direct feedback system will be deployed, allowing guests to submit anonymous input. And I, Marcus Reed, will accept personal responsibility for all outcomes of this program. He looked up. The statement ends with a single line. Respect is not a service, it is the foundation of every relationship. The boardroom went still. Victoria nodded slowly. You just rewrote our brand philosophy, Marcus. Alan allowed himself a small smile. All right, I will push this to the press. And perhaps you just saved us from something far worse. Marcus sat and leaned back. For the first time all day, he exhaled not from fatigue, but release. No one saved anyone, Alan. We have simply begun again. A blade of lightning flashed beyond the windows. Thunder followed like a drum roll. Victoria rose, her tone warming. Marcus, do you know why I chose you as chief executive 3 years ago? Marcus smiled a little. Because I know how to grow revenue, she shook her head. No. Because you were the only one who never forgot that, at any height, people still deserve respect. Marcus bowed his head. The overhead lights drew clean lines across his face, sharpening every contour of composure. Outside, the rain began. Heavy drops hammered the glass like the slow-measured knock of fate. Alan Foster stood, gathering his files. I will handle the media. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock first, live interview. The CNN network and the Wall Street Journal have confirmed. Marcus nodded. Good. That is our chance to turn crisis into lesson. Chairs scraped softly as they rose. As the door closed, only Marcus and Victoria remained. She looked at him, a rare smile passing. You know, Marcus, in 20 years I have never seen a chief executive choose to stand at the eye of the storm and keep this kind of poise. Marcus answered quietly, The storm is not what frightens me. What frightens me is when we convince ourselves we are safe. She nodded and turned. Rest early. Tomorrow you face the world. Marcus smiled. I do not fear the world. I fear the day I stop learning from it. Victoria left him alone. Rain beat harder. In the hush of the wind, Marcus opened his laptop and watched the video again, his card set on the counter, Sarah's stunned gaze, comments rolling like waves. He spoke softly, as if to himself. Tomorrow we start over with humility. The window returned his reflection. A man once dismissed, now a mirror held up to an entire industry. And beneath the rain it seemed Chicago was listening. Dawn laid its first light across Chicago's skyscrapers. The night rain had stopped, but moisture still clung to the high glass, reflecting a sky washed in pale rose and amber. The city roused. Traffic began to murmur along Michigan Avenue, announcing a new day, a day the entire media world had been waiting for. On the 38th floor of Sterling Hospitality's headquarters, the media room had been arranged with ceremonial precision. 3 cameras stood ready, the lighting tuned just enough to honor the oak table where Marcus Reed would sit. The clock read 7 o'clock in the morning. The air was taut as a violin string. The comms team kept silent, broken only by the soft patter of keyboards and the coordinator's countdown, 10 minutes to live. Alan Foster, the regional executive director, stepped in with a cup of coffee. He looked at Marcus, who sat quietly before the great pane of glass eyes on the Chicago River, brightening by degrees. Are you ready? Alan asked. Marcus smiled faintly. I have been ready since last night. Alan nodded, lowering his voice. Marcus, this is the first live interview since the story blew up. The whole country is watching. One wrong word, and the stock could keep falling. Marcus turned, gaze steady. I am not here to save a stock price, Alan. I am here to restore trust. Alan let out a breath. Then tell the truth. The way you always do. The host from the CNN network, a woman named Rachel Adams, was ushered in. She wore a deep blue suit, her face serene, and her eyes keen, the look of someone who had interviewed hundreds of politicians and top executives. She shook Marcus's hand, polite but firm. Mr. Reed, she said, thank you for agreeing to speak. I will be frank, very few chief executives choose to appear live right after a crisis like this. Marcus answered in a low voice. I believe silence only distorts the truth. Rachel inclined her head. Good. We begin in 3 minutes. The cameras lit their red lamps. The floor manager counted down 3, 2, 1, we are on. Rachel faced the lens, a professional smile opening on her lips. Good morning. You are watching This Morning with America. Our guest today is one of the most talked about names in the country, Mr. Marcus Reed, Chief Executive of Sterling Hospitality Group. He became the center of controversy after being refused service by his own staff at a club owned by his company. She turned to Marcus. First question, what did you feel in that moment? Marcus looked straight into the lens, unflinching. I felt sadness, not for myself, but for those who have forgotten that respect is the core of this profession. I am not angry at that receptionist. I am angry at the system that taught her to believe discrimination is part of professionalism. Rachel's brows lifted. You are not angry after being humiliated in public. Marcus shook his head slightly. Anger is an instinct. Leadership is the duty to turn emotion into action. I do not need to retaliate. I need to reform. Behind the set, Alan allowed himself a quiet smile. He knew Marcus had just won hearts with a single line. Rachel continued, You speak of reform. What does that mean? Specifically, Marcus leaned in his voice, even and clear. We have launched a comprehensive overhaul. Every Sterling employee, from managers to room attendants, will be trained in bias awareness, respectful communication, and equitable service. An automated feedback channel now allows guests to send their input directly to the office of the chief executive. No one has the right to discriminate for any reason. Rachel nodded, jotting a quick note. And the cost of this program, Marcus replied, I will fund it personally, because leaders shouldn't talk about change with words, but with actions. In the control room, a young producer whispered to a colleague, He just won. This is not the tone of a defense. It is the tone of someone rewriting the rules. Rachel's smile flickered warmer. Do you believe this incident damaged your brand? Marcus answered slowly. Every wound hurts, but treated well it becomes a scar, and a scar testifies to survival. Sterling may be hurt today, but we will become stronger, more transparent, and more humane. A beat of quiet. Then Rachel added softly, almost confiding, I think viewers need to hear that. She looked into the camera. Your story is spreading. Thousands are messaging the program in real time. They say they have lived the same feeling you did, but without the power to answer back. Marcus bowed his head. If what happened to me helps them feel seen, then all of this trouble has been worth it. The interview ended after 40 minutes. When the lights went dark, Rachel rose and offered her hand. Mr. Reed, today, you did more than steady your brand. You put respect back into the conversation. I believe by tomorrow this will echo farther than you expect. Marcus smiled lightly. I only hope it helps someone look at another person with fairer eyes." As she left, Alan came over and clapped his shoulder. "Excellent. Media is flooding in with positive reactions. Live viewership just past 2 million. Marcus smiled, tired but content. "Good. But the real work has only begun." He turned to the glass. Outside, the morning light had turned a deep gold, laying across the river like a ribbon. In his mind, the faces from last night's lobby remained: Sarah with her head bowed, Jennifer with clenched hands, Harold standing silent near the corner. He knew true change would not arrive with a morning interview. It would begin with those people, one by one. That afternoon, in Marcus's office, Jennifer Brooks stepped in. She still carried tension, but her eyes no longer shook. "Mr. Reed," she said, "the press is praising the interview. The stock has begun to recover." Marcus smiled. "Thank you, Jennifer. But remember, relief must never harden into complacency." She nodded. "Yes, sir. I have another update. Sarah Clark has already started early training. She just sent an apology email to the entire team. Honestly, I think she is truly changing." Marcus paused a moment, then said quietly, "Change is never too late, Jennifer, as long as a person dares to look directly at their own mistakes." Jennifer studied him, voice sincere. "You know, I did not sleep last night. I kept replaying what you said in the boardroom. I used to think I was a good leader. Now I understand. Leadership is not control, it is listening." Marcus gave her a gentle smile. "Thank you for understanding. Help me teach that to others." Her eyes brightened. "I will do my best." When she left, Marcus remained alone. On the desk, his laptop displayed an email subject line invitation to appear on This Morning with America. Beneath it lay dozens of messages from other chief executives and companies, all saying the same thing: "We want to learn from your model." Marcus chuckled softly. A light breeze from the window lifted the edges of his reports. He gathered them, glanced at the rising numbers, and set them down again. His eyes went back to the city where people hurried under the sun. "It is not the numbers," he murmured. "It is people who keep a brand alive." Outside, a clock struck 8 chimes. A new day had truly begun, not only for the Sterling Club, but for an entire hospitality industry now looking their way. Marcus rose and fastened his jacket. He was no longer the man turned away in last night's lobby. He was the one who made the world reconsider how we treat one another with respect. And sometimes it takes just one person choosing to stand upright in the face of bias to change an entire culture. Rain poured over Chicago that night like a thin silver curtain. Lightning tore across the sky, illuminating the towering Sterling Tower, standing firm at the city's center, where the lights could not quite drive away the chill of a heavy night. On the 14th floor, the main boardroom blazed with cold fluorescent light reflecting off the polished walnut table. The black leather chairs surrounded it, each occupied by someone sitting upright, silent, as though waiting for judgment to be passed. The clock's hands stopped at 8. 12 members of the board were present. At the center, Marcus Reed sat still. His grey suit was immaculate, his hands clasped together, his expression calm to the point of mystery, as if he were listening not to the rain on the glass, but to something deeper within the storm. The chair, Victoria Sterling, spoke first, her voice low and hard as steel. "Marcus, do you realize that no CEO has ever gone public with internal matters like this? Are you certain this will save Sterling and not sink it?" Marcus lifted his head. His eyes caught the light. "It is not the company I am trying to save, Mom," he said slowly, his voice heavy with meaning. It is its soul. A wave of silence swept through the room. David Chen, the chief financial officer, cleared his throat, trying to mask his unease. Do you realize our stock dropped 4% in just a few hours? We have lost tens of millions. Marcus nodded, without flinching. I know. But if we do nothing in 3 years, we will lose 30% because no one will believe Sterling is a place worth entering. His words struck like thunder. Alan Foster, the regional executive director, stared at him. What is your plan? Marcus rose. The curtain behind him stirred with the wind, glowing faintly in flashes of blue lightning. He took the remote and switched on the screen. Charts and figures filled the projection, and across the top was a single line of text. Change begins with people. His voice was steady, rhythmic like a drum. We cannot simply replace procedures or personnel. We must rewrite our culture. Every employee, including myself, must relearn the meaning of respect. Without respect, every achievement is nothing but paint on a cracked wall. Victoria narrowed her eyes. Her gaze caught between doubt and curiosity. That sounds like a dream, Marcus. We need results. He smiled slightly. Every great plan begins with a dream, and sometimes to save a ship you do not row harder, you build a better vessel. Another bolt of lightning flared outside. Rain hammered the windows harder. The air thickened until everyone could hear the beat of their own hearts. Victoria folded her arms, studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Fine. I am giving you full authority. But if this fails, Marcus interrupted softly but firmly. I will take responsibility. Alone. The words dropped into the room and merged with the roll of thunder, making the walls tremble slightly. In that flash of light, Marcus's face appeared sharply defined, not that of a CEO managing a crisis, but of a man who believed in something greater than power. Victoria gave a small nod, her eyes softening. Good. Then prove that your dream is worth believing in. Outside, the rain showed no sign of stopping. But inside that room, something had changed, as though the thunder itself had announced it. A new chapter of Sterling had just been written, born not of money, but of the courage of one man who dared to speak the truth. And as Marcus stepped out, and the door closed behind him, the sound of rain merged with the breath of the night. Over the dim skyline of Chicago, a small light flickered faint yet steadfast, like the first hint of dawn still waiting to arrive. 3 days later, Chicago greeted its first sunlight after a long stretch of rain. The Sterling Tower shimmered in gold. In the grand lobby, crowds gathered, not customers but employees from across the entire company. Security guards, receptionists, chefs, even branch managers. They had come to hear Marcus Reed's first speech since the crisis. He stepped onto the stage, not wearing the rigid formality of a CEO, just a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, his voice low but steady. I'm not standing here to give orders, he began. I'm standing here to apologize because I allowed you to believe that this company's value lies in profit. The room fell silent. Marcus looked around, his gaze meeting every face. From today we start again. No one is defined by their title. No one is judged by their appearance. Here at Sterling, everyone will be treated as a guest of honor because respect doesn't recognize class. A wave of applause spread through the hall, not for the slogan, but because they believed he meant every word. At the back, Sarah Clark stood frozen. She remembered that day, the calm in his eyes, while she panicked the way he never raised his voice. Today she stood here as part of the change he had promised. When the event ended, Marcus stepped down from the podium and approached her. "You've done well," he said. "Your training sessions are inspiring, people." Sarah's voice trembled. "It's not because of me, sir. It's because you never gave up." Marcus smiled. "If I had given up, who would have taught me that compassion can save a company?" Outside, the sunlight blazed brighter, and within everyone present, a small flame had been lit quiet, but impossible to extinguish. 3 weeks had passed since the name Marcus Reed first dominated the headlines. Chicago still hadn't stopped talking about him. On television, he was called the man who made the service industry look in the mirror. In small cafes, students discussed not his wealth, but how he managed to keep his dignity when he was disrespected. That evening, Marcus appeared at the International Conference on Ethics in Service, held at the Grand Hall, where representatives from more than 20 countries had gathered. The hall was flooded with light camera flashes, sparkled from every angle. Yet when he stepped onto the stage, everything seemed to slow down. No slides, no scripted speech, no teleprompter. Just a man, a microphone, and a spotlight illuminating his face. Marcus began with a warm, steady voice. 3 weeks ago, I was refused service by one of my own employees. They didn't know who I was. In that moment, I had 2 choices: to get angry or to listen. And I chose the latter. He paused, his eyes sweeping across hundreds of silent faces. That moment changed everything. Because I realized that while we spend so much time teaching employees about professionalism, we forget to teach them about humanity. His tone softened, reaching into the silence of the hall. We cannot teach someone to respect others through rules. We can only make them feel it through the way we live through our actions every single day. 1 second passed, then 2, before the entire hall erupted in applause. The clapping went on so long that Marcus had to bow in gratitude. When he looked up, the chandelier lights shimmered in his eyes like tiny stars. After the speech, Kenji Yamamoto, a Japanese CEO and longtime partner, approached him. He handed Marcus a thick folder, his expression serious yet filled with pride. "Marcus," he said, "I want to open a global institute, a place that redefines kindness, respect, and integrity in the service industry." Marcus looked up, momentarily surprised. "An institute?" Kenji nodded. "Yes, and it will be called the Reed Institute, because you are the one who inspired it." Marcus let out a soft laugh. "Kenji, I don't need my name on a building. But if that institute is free for those less fortunate, then I'll agree." Kenji smiled, his eyes warm. "You're still the same, always choosing the harder path." Marcus replied with a faint, thoughtful smile. "I'm just learning how to be human again, Kenji, and I hope the world learns with me." The 2 men shook hands. The stage lights gleamed above them, blending with the sound of soft rain tapping against the glass windows. A new beginning had taken shape, not built on power, but on the simple belief that respect can change the world. 2 months later, the Reed Institute officially opened its doors. The campus was filled with flags from different nations. On the podium, Sarah Clark, now its first instructor, began to speak. "I once stood behind a reception desk, believing I was doing everything right, until I learned that respect is not a procedure. It is a choice." The audience erupted in applause. Marcus stood quietly at the back of the hall watching. In the eyes of the students he saw belief, not fear. After the ceremony, a young woman approached him. "Sir, I'm from Kenya. I received a full scholarship. I just wanted to say thank you for believing in those who haven't been believed in." Marcus took her hand and smiled. "You're the one who reminds me that hope always has value." That afternoon, Kenji handed Marcus a report. 80% of the students were either dropouts or people who never had a chance to attend college. We've accomplished something most people thought was impossible. Marcus nodded. We simply started again from what is right. That night, he returned to his old office. On the desk, the same business card from years ago still rested there. He picked it up, the light reflecting off the small print, Marcus Reed, CEO, Sterling Hospitality Group. He smiled softly. A title can change, but values never do. 3 years later, on a clear spring morning, Chicago glowed beneath soft, golden sunlight. The Sterling Tower stood tall in the city's heart, but its name had changed the Reed Center for human leadership. What had once been a symbol of wealth and ambition was now a monument to empathy, integrity, and respect. Inside the grand auditorium, thousands gathered, employees from every branch, students from the Reed Institute, and international guests from all over the world. They knew this was the day Marcus Reed would step down from his position as CEO. Yet no one saw it as an ending. It felt like the next chapter of a legacy built not on power, but on principle. When Marcus appeared at the edge of the stage, the entire hall rose. The applause came like a wave, warm and unending. He walked forward, slowly, dressed simply in a white shirt. Sleeves rolled high, his face calm and kind, the same as it had always been. When the applause faded, he raised his hand. 3 years ago, Marcus began, his voice steady. I was refused service by one of my own employees. That day, I realized how easily we forget that respect is not earned by title or wealth, but by the way we treat others. Today, I stand here, welcomed by those same people, not out of obligation, but out of understanding. That is the journey of trust, from misunderstanding to empathy, from fear to respect. The hall fell completely silent. Marcus's words lingered soft yet powerful. In these 3 years, he continued, I've seen remarkable things. Sarah Clark, who once stood behind a reception desk, now teaches others about compassion. Jennifer Brooks has turned management into the art of listening. And thousands of students from across the world are learning that service is not a job, but an act of humanity. Applause thundered again, but Marcus waited patiently, then spoke once more, his tone reflective. Someone once asked me, Marcus, what's the secret to success? I told them there is no secret. Because every lasting success begins with how we treat those who have less power than we do. We can build taller towers, open more hotels, or grow richer, but if we forget to say thank you, if we stop seeing people as human beings, everything will eventually crumble. From the front row, Kenji Yamamoto rose and walked onto the stage. He held a plaque made of polished wood and engraved silver reading, Marcus Reed, the man who redefined ethical standards in global business. The applause swelled once more as Marcus accepted it. His expression remained calm, almost serene. I didn't change the world, he said softly. I just stopped long enough to listen to it. The silence that followed was profound, the kind of silence that holds meaning. Marcus looked across the hall, seeing faces of employees, students, and friends. People who had grown with him, who now carried the same light he once carried alone. I will step away from this position, he said, but I will never step away from this purpose. Sterling will continue to grow because respect doesn't need a leader. It only needs people who believe in it. He bowed deeply. Sunlight poured through the glass windows, surrounding him like a golden halo. In the audience, Sarah wiped her tears. Jennifer held Kenji's hand. A student whispered softly, "That's the man who taught us that kindness is also power. As Marcus walked off the stage, hundreds rose again, clapping endlessly. He smiled, not once looking back. The doors opened, and a flood of white light poured in, blending with the soft sound of music. On the massive screen behind him, the words appeared, "Real success is not measured by wealth, but by the number of lives you've lifted." Outside, the air was cool and fragrant with lavender from the garden. Marcus looked up at the bright sky, his eyes shining with quiet conviction. Because once people learn to truly respect one another, the world will no longer need miracles. It will only need kindness. From the perspective of an expert in leadership culture and professional ethics, this story is not just a lesson about misunderstanding, but a wake-up call for an entire system where power, status, or skin color are sometimes placed above human dignity. When he was disrespected, the CEO didn't get angry and didn't retaliate. He chose to let the truth speak for itself, and it was that calm composure that drew a clear line between those who hold power and those who truly have depth. Because power can make others afraid, but only integrity can make them respect you. If you believe that the way we treat those with less power reveals who we truly are, then like this video to help spread that message, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more stories where kindness is tested by prejudice. Before you go, leave your comment, just a few short words, but filled with faith in what is right. Keep your dignity.